Hi everybody, how are you? You guys hear me?
Yes. Yes.
My name is Mae Johnson. My story is called Walking the Boulevard. I'm going to read parts from the beginning, middle, and end, but I'll be leaving chunks out, so if you want to check it out later, you know what to do. Detective Gordon from the Sex Trafficking Unit of the San Diego Police Department rang into my classroom phone at Hoover High School. Do you want to interview one of the girls? I have a sex trafficking victim named Amy who testified in court. She wants to tell her story. She is pregnant by her pimp and has come in off the streets to get some help. If you pick a public spot downtown, but private enough that you won't be on display, you should be all right. I was not a journalist. I was a high school English teacher, but I was months away from retirement and was ready to try a new career. I had met Detective Gordon a few weeks earlier at a fundraiser for STARS, a facility that helps young women escape their sex traffickers and return to a more healthy life. I had taught at Hoover for over 16 years and read thousands of journals from my immigrant students about abuse, incest, and violent relationships. But I'd never had a student share about being a victim of sex trafficking. Were my girls more vulnerable because they had already been sexually molested? I wanted to know. Do you think any of my students might be involved with sex trafficking or pimping? I asked Detective Gordon. Absolutely. Many Hoover students have been propositioned, threatened, or are already working the streets. For every story I shared with the detective, he had hundreds of similar stories. I'd like to learn more to give my students information that will keep them safe. Let me make a phone call. I have someone in mind. On our appointed interview day, as I fought to keep my stomach from flipping like the fish on the restaurant sign above my head, my mind flashed back to Ella, a student who had written about her fear when her mother left for work each night. Mom worked at the 24-hour Mexican restaurant on 22nd and University Avenue from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. Her father drank his first Carino Cerveza when he walked in the door after working all day, shoveling someone else's dirt, or loading someone else's discarded couches, chairs, or broken appliances. Their rejects kept him comfortable while he made his way through a 12-pack before the evening was done. The light would creep into this young girl's room when the door to her bedroom was pushed ajar. She would pray and feign sleep, but it didn't matter what she said to God or what she did to try and fool her drunken father. He would overpower her delicate body time and time again. I had asked her to stay after class the next day and disclosed my obligation to Child Protective Services and what it meant to be a mandated reporter. More importantly, I shared my concern for her safety and well-being. She screamed, "You have no business ruining my life. You have no idea what will happen to me." She cried and pleaded with me not to tell. I returned to the reality in front of me. I stood up and flagged down a young woman who matched the description given to me by Detective Gordon. Amy sat across from me at the Tin Fish restaurant, which was within walking distance of Father Joe's village where she was living. The patrons lucky enough to be enjoying a beautiful weekday morning would never know that 8 months ago, Amy's testimony had helped in the arrest of 4 major players in a San Diego sex trafficking ring. We settled on a table removed from the fray, and Amy nonchalantly but incessantly scanned her environment. Amy had stunning, piercing, golden eyes. She was visibly pregnant, wearing blue jeans and a yellow V-neck top that showed a tattoo across her chest. Down her arms, there were 3 other small tattoos, the last right above her wrist, where mangled scars were visible. Her short brown hair was covered with a blue and purple scarf pulled over her forehead and tied in the back. From her backpack, she brought out a small recorder. She asked if she could play a poem she wrote while in jail. Fuck the world in which I live. I'm tired of being pushed, shoved, abused, and used after all that I did. These men are scoundrels, pit ants, and poor, hustling, asshole fools. I won't take them as treatment or bull. As a prostitute, call girl, drug dealer, student, I don't have time to be played like a fool. That's why I started way back when I was just 10 years old, using my body not as a treasure, but as a tool to get around all the dumbass male fools. And I'll die living by that rule. Nancy, what has it been like for you since that poem was written? Amy, it's kind of weird staying in a homeless shelter, but I want to create a life for my baby. I never know whether someone is going to come try to take her or whether somebody is going to shoot me or kill me once the baby is born. I've had this pimp's family chase me around town saying, wait until the baby's born. I'm gonna kill you, shoot you dead. She'll live on without you. And if it weren't for me being able to call the detective and the girls from Bilateral Safety Corridor Coalition, I wouldn't know who to turn to, you know, other than God. What they do is they bust us working girls as escorts. They send an undercover officer to our room to get us. Once they have us in custody, they interrogate us until they break us down. And it's not hard to break us down, although it took them 13.5 hours to get me to break. While I was waiting in a hotel, I broke off a piece of glass from the mirror in my room and slit my wrist because I knew my pimp would find me either before or after the trial and kill me. The blood scared me and I called one of the detectives who had given me his card. He sent an ambulance and transferred me to a safe house until trial. Can you go back to your earliest memory of family or street life? I was taken from my mother when I was 9. She was a crack-addicted prostitute. Her drugs meant more to her than I did. Men meant more to her than I did. So I became a runaway, fleeing from 29 foster homes and 16 group homes. By the time I was 15, I was facing incarceration in an adult prison for sex trafficking charges for my oldest son's father, my son, who is now 19. I got pregnant when I was 10, the first time. My mom offered my body as payment for a $10 piece of rock cocaine. I had my son at 11. Were you in a foster home at that time? No, I ran away and lived with the baby's father, the drug dealer. I was gone the entire time that I was pregnant that time. I didn't go to prenatal care and I was locked in a room by myself. Every time I tried to go outside, he would lock me. I had home delivery. Even before I got pregnant, I started snorting cocaine when I was 10 years old. By the time I was 14, I was using crack, smoking pot, drinking, hanging out late at night. I started tricking out my body when I was 13, mostly to my mom's tricks or John's. Amy at 13 could have been my student. Would she have written about these horrific experiences in her journal? Would I have been able to help? Teachers never know what happens after we file Child Protective Services reports, and a student will rarely give up the details to an informant. Ella, the student who wrote about abuse by her father, stopped talking to me after my CPS report. She didn't make it through the school year. A year later, she showed up in my classroom after school one day. The second I made eye contact with her, she began to cry. Ella walked across the room into my arms, and by the time she reached me, I was crying too. You saved my life. I just wanted you to know.